Christine, thank you. And joining us now for some market strategy is Paul Schatz. He's president of Heritage Capital. And Paul, I mean, when we sum up what we've been through over the past 6 months, and you see what the markets have done, the Dow in negative territory by about 3%, but otherwise it's been fairly decent. Is this the beginning of the end of the recession or the end of the beginning?
Scott, I like the way you put that, and good morning. Well, you have to take a step back. Normally, people talk about markets usually bottoming ahead of a recession. Yeah, that's true most of the time. In this case, I view this rally more as a rally driven by liquidity than any of these green shoots we keep talking about. I think the rally is, although closer to the end than the beginning, usually the end of the rally is the most dramatic. So I still have my sights on somewhere between Dow 9 and 10,000 by Labor Day.
Hey Paul, this is Christine here. What do you make of this risk that, maybe China would reflate too much, pushing up oil price, killing off recovery in the rest of the global economy? What do you make of that risk?
Not much. I've been on the other side of the camp. I am still squarely focused on deflation over inflation. I think the dollar still rallies. I think the U.S. Treasury market still rallies. I'm not worried about the overcooking of this meal. I think the bigger problem is when the Fed removes the punch bowl, which in my view they're already starting to do. I worry that come September, October, November, we begin to settle backwards, not continue to move forwards.
Let me ask a similar question to you, Roger, in terms of where the absolute level of these markets can go from here. Paul was talking about being driven by liquidity. I have question marks about the volumes in the markets, though, with that as a premise.
No, well, I think I certainly agree, Mr. Schatz, that the market is driven principally by liquidity, as it nearly always is. The economics are slightly supportive, and a lot of bulls have developed this thesis about green shoots. It seems to me that they've got some coloured spectacles on in order to see those green shoots, because what you've actually got in the economy is a bit of a rebound in inventory, but the final demand numbers, the retail sales numbers, capital spending in the private sector and so on is horrible. There's a bit of public spending there, but that's not going to last. So I think the economy is going to disappoint 6 months, 9 months out. And I suspect, as Mr. Schatz says, that there's a risk that the liquidity will be taken away as well. And when you've taken that away, all you've got is some fairly satisfactory profits numbers.
But Paul, my question is, instead of profits increasing by people cutting costs across the board, when are we going to see profits increasing in the US and beyond on the back of real gains? When are we going to see the clarity and outlook return? Because it's only the policymakers who are calling the recovery, not the companies I see.
It's interesting you said, when are we going to see the real profitability return? And I think that's the problem. People are looking at this as though somehow we're going to return to what's considered the good old days, what happened in the 90s. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. I think the problem is common sense. We all know this is not going to be a consumer-led recovery. I mean, and the numbers are getting less worse, not substantially better. So less worse, we feel a little better, but to take a 10,000-foot view, the numbers are still kind of stinky.
Paul, I really tend to agree with you when you say that things are less worse and that we've been too quick to grasp onto those green shoots. Let me ask you about oil real quick. I mean, at what point does this rise in oil prices, which has really carried the stock market over the last several weeks, where does that become an issue, either inflationary or almost adding a tax that further keeps consumers down as we enter into further into the summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think oil is beginning to have an issue right now. I'm not worried, again, the inflation picture. If inflation was really going to be a problem, gold wouldn't be below its all-time high. Gold peaked in March of '08. So gold has gone nowhere, or call it 5% lower in more than a year. So inflation to me is not even a remote possibility in the next 18 months. But your question about oil, I think oil is starting to have a problem right now in the economy, and it's going to be this kind of continued drag on things. It's interesting, a year ago we were so worried that every time oil spiked, the stock market collapsed. And now oil's going up because of the supposed increase in demand. So therefore, it's a good thing. I don't buy it. The oil's driven by primarily the dollar. I think the dollar goes back to new relative highs of the last year, and then I think oil begins to come in. If it hasn't started already, the topping process, I think it's going to start in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Oh, and I would actually add something to that, if I may. commodity prices aren't much of a problem, and look at what's happening to wages around the world. Because when you do that, you see that there's almost no growth whatsoever in any country, and in some you've got substantial reductions in wages coming through. So the idea that we're going to have inflation strikes me as being absolutely bizarre.
Yeah, you know, in the 70s, it was it was the number where it was X food and energy. People talked about, well, it wasn't as strong as the headline number. Now we have kind of the opposite. Now, when wages start to increase, maybe I'll get a little more concerned, but come on, I mean, where's wages increasing? You got unemployment 10%, we're showing no signs of abating. Unemployment's going to go to 10.5%, 11%. I mean, where's this whole wage crisis going to come from?
All right. Gentlemen, we want you to continue to stay with us to talk more about this lively debate. Paul Schatz, President, Heritage Capital, and of course Roger Nightingale, our super guest, will be continuing to stay with us on the show. Let's cross live now to Tokyo and check in on the trading day.